Okay, may I start? We made a summary, and I found it was quite a fascinating conclusion, which Brigitte suggested, and we decided there's a new phenomenon in the world, orphanage, orphans, and it's all over the world. If you listen to the stuff about migration, people losing their homes, leaving their countries, the families being broken up, there's actually this whole new group who's like orphans, unrooted. And it's due to wars, it's due to things like AIDS, and it's even in the our Western lifestyle of parenting, divorcing, many parents divorcing. And it's not a divorce per se, but it's when there's constant conflict between the parents and the kids can't see both parents. And often it's the men they don't see. These kids, what is it? It's not what we used to the holding family. So in a way, there is this whole new group of orphans. So what we have is a collapse of family systems. There's no containment, loss of religion, belief systems, and role models in the process. So the times we live in has in some way created its own crisis, which over time maybe we may be able to identify and see what happens. What is necessary is more involvement of communities, because we can't wait for governments to do that. Most governments are so busy with their own power politics that unless communities and civil society gets more involved, the only thing that was shifted, so civil societies get involved globally, and we can do it globally now because we're global citizens. So what we looked at is this breakup of families and the trauma that brings, the unrootedness that brings. How do we just thought of processing it? Maybe once again it's the community support, social workers, and what was particularly interesting was kindergarten for small children, nursery schools, because this is when you're the most perceptive to influences when children are little. Empathy and rules. I read something last night about connecting, and I want to take you to that thing about the brain, the new brain, which is here, the thinking faculty, and then the old brain here, which is instinctive and is just about survival. It's not thinking, it's emotion and instinct, fight, flight, or freeze. And they say little children, the new research shows that the development of the brain, some parts of it only settles in the early 20s. So the little child of 3, 4, his brain is not fully developed yet. So when they have intense emotions, there is no, they misbehave and they act out. They do not know how to move from this brain, the old brain or the lower brain, to that one. So you as a parent or an adult have to help the child initially to contain. And they said the best thing to do is when the child is upset, you just hold them. And let them cry. You're not spoiling them. And in that holding, their brains grows new connections. And they learn that they are not bad. There's not something wrong with them. You still love them. And once they calm down, they move up here, and now you can talk to them. Our discipline so far in the West was very much about, or in some countries, in some families more than others, it's about punishment. And of course there's a place for certain controlled punishment, but just hitting or even time out is now criticized a little bit. They say you first need the child to calm down and return here. Because while you talk to him while he's in this state, he doesn't hear you. He can't hear you. He's like a traumatized person. All right, so it's connecting, and then what is the rules? And then you stick to the rules. These is the boundaries. Schools, children being helped in groups, parenting courses. So it's including the whole body, mind, and feelings. Now, what was more important for me today was actually to teach a hands-on technique to move from here to here. What research have shown that when they work with prisoners, and remember most prisoners is people who actually have been through trauma or childhood abuse, so they lack impulse control. When you lack impulse control, it means you primarily function here when you get upset. And they found if they teach them this technique, less of them return to jail. Because what you actually teach them is to think before they act. And if you don't teach them that technique, they are just caught up here and they just act. They're just impulsive. So it's called impulse control. I also find in therapy, when you teach it to people who have anger problems, all kinds of things, you just teach them this technique. And it's called the 3-3 breathing technique over here. Okay? Remember I said yesterday already, remember you're not your brain. I mean, if your tummy is upset, you don't say, I'm bad because I have an upset tummy. So why do you think you're bad if your brain is a little bit confused? So if we stop identifying with the brain and say, this is the feelings we have, and I realize my thinking is not clear, we can quicker bring it back to baseline. All right? But if we think, because we're confused, there's something wrong with us, then you get more anxious because now you reject yourself. Okay, so I want us to practice that quickly. And I'll explain to you what happens inside the body. The moment you have something triggers you, that upsets you, something happens, it registers in your emotional brain, and that immediately communicates to the brain center here that you're not safe. And it can be anything. It can be you're late for an appointment. Or it can be just you get up in the morning and you wonder what is going to happen today. It doesn't need to be a big thing. But suddenly you have this feeling of being unsettled. Immediately the emotional brain triggers this one and says, you're not safe. And in that moment, the ratio of the gases in the blood changes. Because this is what this triggers. It triggers a change of the gases in the blood. And that message is to the body to release adrenaline because you're now in danger. And your breathing changes without you realizing, because in the changing of the breathing is the changing of the gases. Okay? And I'm totally oversimplifying it, all right? Because it doesn't matter. The bottom is that is how it works. It drops the blood from the thinking part below the chin in the lower part of the body. And that is why people are then anxious and they're uptight and their stomach is tight and your heart starts beating faster and you're sweating. Because you have this rush of adrenaline, because your lizard brain have told you now that you are in danger. So the blood is below in the lower body. That is why when we're in that condition we can run faster, we can jump higher, we can pick up things that we never think we'll be able to do. And people will often say afterwards, I can't believe I did it. I can't believe I jumped that gate. Okay, so it's a wonderful mechanism that it cuts out the thinking, because the thinking will say you can't do it. Isn't that amazing? So it cuts it out, so you act. And that is what happens when people are attacked or in trauma also. But it also happens in everyday life. You go for an interview. You write an exam. This is what your brain does. It says you're in danger. Okay, so now your body is flush with adrenaline, but now what is it? I'm standing here. There's no lion chasing me. And there's no murderer chasing me either, but I'm flooded with adrenaline. Okay? So the first thing to recognize is this is what's happening inside your body. And you do it by you will find when you go in that state that there's a body sign. And it's different for each person. Some people suddenly feel their stomach is hollow or it's tense, or they feel their hearts are beating faster, or you just know. You're anxious now, okay? So when you get a body sign, ignore your thoughts, because your thoughts are all over the show. Just ignore it. And start doing the following breathing. You breathe in for 3 counts, more or less. A little bit longer than normally with a closed mouth. Then you hold it for more or less 3 counts, a little bit longer than normal, and then out with an open mouth. Okay, let me illustrate it. You don't go hectic breathing. You just go, hold for 3, open mouth. You do it again. I want you to do it with me. Breathe in for 3. Think as if you breathe into your shoulders, okay? Okay? Breathe in. Hold. Open mouth out. Again. Again. Once more. Okay. You know what you've just done? You've changed the chemistry in your blood. When you do this breathing, the body says, the gases has returned to normal. The danger is over. Let's break down the adrenaline. So some of it is breaking down through the kidneys. Some of it you sweat out. And the third part is turned into gas. That's why you breathe out with an open mouth. The trick here is never to breathe in with an open mouth, because then you'll make it worse. Are you with me? And the moment that happens, the adrenaline is broken down, the blood returns to the head, and now you can think. And this is when the old people said, count to 10. This is what they meant. Okay. I find if you explain to people what happens inside their bodies, then it makes sense to them. I always say to my clients, it's like you drive a car. When I get in the car, I'm not the car, right? But I hold the steering wheel. Now, after the rain, often the roads are slippery in South Africa, the tar roads, because there's oil on the roads, okay? And suddenly your car starts slipping. If you do this with the wheel, you will turn the car, it will roll, right? What do you need to do? You need to sort of hold the wheel, gear back, not just put on the brakes. So what do? You immediately realize this danger, this is how I must manage the car. And you bring it to a standstill. Your body sounds like the car. Your breathing is the steering wheel. And if you explain it to people like that, they get it. And I've seen people after one session, they change their temper tantrums. Because I always say to him, just listen to me. You just listen to me. You do exactly as I tell you. And then I guarantee you, you'll see the results. And it's true, they come back and they say they can't believe it. They used to shout at their wives and children, and they do this, it changes. I say, you time out. When you get upset, you walk out, you go do your breathing. The physiological fact is the body can take between 2 to 20 minutes to return to normal if you're upset. Okay? So the more upset you are, the longer you need to do this breathing. I don't know if you have it here. I don't know if you have it in Rwanda and South Africa. We have road rage. A lot of road rage, which people drive, and some driver in front of them does something, and then when they get to the stop street, they get out and they get something and they beat the other person. And you know why it happens? It's because the person is in this brain. He's not thinking. He gets out, and we had people who beat the other one to death. And if they only knew to do this technique, they will be still upset at the other driver, but if they know, okay, no, I'll just do the breathing, calm down, and then I'll decide, then they won't do that. They will calm their bodies. Remember we had this case of Oscar Pistorius in last year, which everyone in the world watched, poor boy. If he knew this technique, he would never have shot through that door. He suffers from high anxiety. He impulsively believed there was something, and other factors obviously contributed. But if he just knew about this calming himself, he would have not just pulled that trigger. He would first have asked, is there somebody? Okay, so this is a fantastic technique. You can teach it to school children. Before you start the lesson in the morning, you teach them that. You teach it to prisoners. Now, what I say to people, practice this, and I want you all to practice this on your own during the day. Nobody sees when you do it, because if I do it now, You won't know unless you know I do it, right? So you can do it any place. And the more you practice it, you are actually putting a new map in your brain. You are actually teaching your brain a new technique. And if you keep on practicing this for 2 or 3 weeks, it becomes automatic. You get anxious, you immediately start the breathing, you don't even realize. You don't even think about it, you do it automatically. This is what is so wonderful about the brain. The brain is stupid. If you teach it something, if you expose it to something, it starts doing it. So if you teach it the wrong thing, it does the wrong thing because it doesn't care about you. Remember, it doesn't care about you. It's just what you give it, that it takes. So if you give it a good thing, it takes that. You can add it a little bit. If you're at home and you struggle to fall asleep at night, you do this breathing, okay? Then you close your eyes. You can even close your eyes while you do the breathing. And try, after you've calmed and done the breathing, you visualize something beautiful. Like maybe your mother who holds you and loves you, or maybe a waterfall. I always do a waterfall because I imagine here's the waterfall and there's rocks and I can see the rocks and the color of the rocks and I can see the water and the color of the sun coming through. I feel the sun on my face, I can smell the water, I can hear the water. Because remember, your brain can only think of one thing at a time. That's the other wonderful thing. The brain can never think of 2 things at the same time. So if you think of this vision that you have, it can't think of something else. So if you think, then it's amazing, and suddenly you're more relaxed. But when you do the visualization, you bring this finger and your thumb finger together. You do this. It's an anchor. It's called an anchor. And if you practice this a few times, say one day you're somewhere in the bank and you get irritated with the bank clerk, you just need to do this. And your subconscious mind associate this with being relaxed. Okay? Do you believe me? You better believe me. All right, that is the thing I wanted to say, and I'm sorry I should have told these other people that yesterday, but I hope you take it further. Then this is a very interesting one. I read it in an African wisdom book. When people are traumatized or upset, they dig a hole, and you lie down with the length of your body, and you fill it up with the soil. And just your head sticks out. And then if you're the therapist or the helper, you sit here. You don't talk to them, you don't interfere. And what happens is people start experiencing their bodies, emotions. Some will cry, some may scream. If they scream and there's other people, just give them a pillow, please. Otherwise, the other people get traumatized. And then after a while, they calm down. They normally cry. And then there's like a spiritual experience of peace. Now, I told Grace this morning. She said her people won't like it. They would think it's witchcraft if you do it. Okay? And we have to respect people's beliefs. So, of course, you don't fiddle. But other white people are doing this also now. Do you know what happens? When you lie in there and the soil is on top of you, your subconscious mind thinks you're trapped in one or other situation in life where you felt trapped. So it brings up the body memory from the subconscious, because remember, our subconscious holds the memory in the body, not in the intellect, in the body. So if you do the body work, up comes the emotions, and if you can say to the person, just let it come and drift through and up. But he must hold his arms under the soil, okay? But you just imagine it comes through you and it goes out. And that's the body release. It's an incredible technique. All right. The biggest challenge with that is to get the person who's the assistants to keep their mouths and not interfere and analyze and talk and try and comfort. All right. That's my story. Thank you all very much.